properties of integrals. That's what we're going to talk about today, under 10 minutes, hopefully. All right, stay with me and make sure you do the quiz at the end of this lesson, and make sure you come back and look at and make sure that you are looking at the second lesson after this, because it's very important. Lots of examples I'm going to be doing. Okay, first thing we have to deal with is that there are two different types of integrals. One is called the definite integral, the other one is called the indefinite integrals, and they're very simple. I have two functions set up here, same functions, same graph. And for the definite integrals, very simply, the definite integrals, they have a boundaries. Let's call that lower bound A. Let's call the upper bound B. So definite integral is written within the lower limit and upper limit of that function, and that represents this area under the curve that is bound by the x-axis within this interval AB. Okay, with the indefinite integral, there is no lower limit or upper limit, and the notation for that one is just the elongated s f of x dx. That's all it is. And that means that the difference between the two, the main difference is that this will give you exact value, numerical value, a number, and this will give you a function, another function, okay? And that's the only difference between the two. This one will give you actually a value, which is a number. The other one, which is an indefinite integral, it just gives you a function. You're still dealing with area under the function, but because this function is continuous, means it's representing the entire area. Let's call that area function AX. That's what you will end up getting when you deal with the indefinite integrals. All right, that's the first thing that we want to talk about. The second thing that I have to talk about is the fundamental theorem of calculus, which is, there are two of them, two parts to that. We're going to go through each part so that you understand that clearly, and then we're going to do some examples based on one of the second part of the fundamental theorem of calculus. We call them FTC, by the way, in math. It's very famous. All right, so the first part is very simple, that it says that differentiation and integration are inverse operation of each other, and that basically the antiderivative that we did, it is your integration. And what it means is that if you are taking the integration of this function f of x, that means you're going to find the area under this curve. Okay, what happens, let's call this area ax, the area function ax. What happens is that if you take the derivative of ax, let's call that a prime of x, you're going to get the original function f of x back. Okay, that's what it means. Simple as that. So let me give you an example. Very simply, let's suppose we have original function f of x equal to x squared. Let's take the derivative of that. What is f prime of x? And that is simply 2x. Very good. All right. Now, to go backwards to get the original function, we have to use the concept or operation called the antiderivative, or we have to integrate it. Okay. And to do that, simply we say the antiderivative of 2x dx is equal to, and when you do the math based on this antiderivative formula that we have come up with a few lessons ago, 2 times x squared divided by 2, which is equal to x squared. And so we say that x squared is antiderivative of 2x, okay? And that's what we're doing. So basically, these two, the integration and the differentiation, they are inverse operation of each other. Simple as that. That is the first part of the fundamental theorem of calculus. The second part is very easy. It's basically saying that the area under the curve, this area under the curve is originally driven by the limit of the Riemann sum that we talked about in the last lesson and the lesson before that. I'm going to put a card or leave it in the description below so they can review that. That the limit of a Riemann sum, which is given by this form right here, is a summation, is sigma notation. Remember all the rectangles, the area of the rectangles as that the number of rectangles approaches infinity. When you do that, that is equal to the antiderivative within the interval of AB of that function f of x dx. But the idea is that connection that is being made with the limit of the Riemann sum definition. And that's what the second part of the fundamental theorem of calculus is. This leads to the integration of f of x dx from the lower bound a to upper bound b. It is equal to f of b minus f of a. Second part of the FTC, Fundamental Theorem of Calculus. Okay, so now let's talk about basic properties of integrals. And they're very similar to the differentiation rules. I put in the 4. There are in some texts, and there's another one which is basically breaking down the interval into 2 parts, but I don't think that is very necessary. That's just common sense. But these 4, they are important to know. Number 1 is that when you take the integration of a constant value, it becomes, because of this constant, once you take integration of that, becomes x, right? Then the actual value of it is c times b minus a, which is the boundary in between, and c is the constant. Number 2 is that when you're adding the 2 functions within the integration sign, that means you're doing the integration of two functions that are adding or subtracting, that is equal to each one of those integrations separately added or subtracted from. So very simple again. And then the next one is that if you have the integral of c f of x dx, where c is the constant, you remove the c to the front, and then you will deal with the integration of the function f of x dx. All right, and then one more thing. If you have in general, when you have you take the integration of that, and you will end up getting, let's say, a value of capital F of x, and then there's a plus c. This c, as we mentioned, is called the constant of integration. And if we are dealing with the infinitely many antiderivatives, but other than that, it usually cancels itself out throughout the operations, and we're going to look at some of the examples as well. Okay, let's do a couple of examples. First example, we want to find the integration of 4dx from 1 to 3. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. I did put in the original antiderivative formula here that you can use as a reminder. There are 2 different forms. Both of them are the same. Don't forget to add c, which is the constant of integration. And you notice that in most cases, c gets canceled out anyways, and it doesn't matter. So the first thing we're going to do, so this becomes 4x and plus c. And then the way the notation goes is that you put a straight bar in front, and you say we want to find out that value, which is under the area under the curve, which is a straight line, y equal to 4, from lower bound, lower limit 1 to 3. And then we're just going to plug it in. But remember, start with the upper bound and then use lower bound. Okay, so this would be 4 times 3 plus c. We don't know what that is, right? And then whatever we get, we have to subtract away. And then now we're going to use the lower bound times 1 plus c. And okay, now when you do the math on that, you get 12 plus c minus 4 minus c. And notice that c and minus c, they become 0. And then 12 minus 4 is 8. So that's the value of this integration. All right, let's look at the next question. And this time, we don't even need to worry about c anymore, but let's go ahead and do that. Remember, we're going to use the the form. So remember, 2 is out. We're going to take the 2 out. We're going to do the integration of x cubed dx within the boundaries between 0 and 4, the lower limit and upper limit. Say, okay, this is x3 plus 1 divided by 3 plus 1. We do have a 2 in front from outside, and that's plus c, and now the answer will be 2x to the 4th over 4, which is x to the 4th divided by 2, and that's plus c. All right, now we're going to evaluate that integral from 0 to 4, and then you just go ahead and do the same thing again. And as you start with the upper bound first, right here, so 4 to the 4th divided by 2 minus 0 divided by 2, 0 to the 4th divided by 2, and I ignored c because I just showed you in the first example that c cancels out. There's no reason for you to put that in there anymore, and the final answer will be 32. Okay, one more question. So let's look at this one, and it's using the second or third property of the integrals, and we're going to go through. We're going to first break it up. So this would be the integral of x squared dx minus the integral, again, the boundary between 1 and 3 of 4x dx. And now that we have that, we're just going to go ahead and evaluate each of these two intervals. So let's go ahead and do that. And this will become x cubed divided by 3. And then you have evaluate that between 1 and 3 minus, and this one will be 4 times x squared divided by 2, and you want to evaluate that between 1 and 3. Okay, and then let's do that and then come back. And the first part, you plug in 3 for the upper bound, which is right here. First, you get 3 cubed divided by 3 minus 1/3. 1 cubed is 1 divided by 3, and minus. And here is the part that you have to be aware and be careful. Put a bracket around first. Deal with the inside this integration first. So you have to do the math inside first. So 4 times 9 over 2 minus 4 times 1/2, and that's 9. And then do the math and come back. And you do the math, you get 26 divided by 3, or 26/3 minus 16. And this is after doing all the math in here, right? So I just went through and did the simplifications, and the final answer, you just add the two fractions and you get negative 22 over 3. And you may ask, why is this negative? Well, it can be. It just tells you that the area under the curve is below the x-axis and it's directional. This is not the geometric area, so make sure you understand the difference. This is like almost like full of velocity and displacement, right? Displacement could be negative, and so as velocity could be negative. So it's directional, and in this case, it's above or below the x-axis. So in this case, the value is a net area which is below the x-axis. All right, so these are the 3 examples. Make sure you check out the next video. I'll continue doing more examples with definite integrals. All right, until next time.